I've been thinking about, 10 years. Amanda and I, we moved here in 2007. It was me, her, 2 kids, and a dog. The dog died. We had 2 more kids since then. And there really wasn't much to begin with. And to think about all the things that God's done has been pretty amazing. I remember starting at Jack Britt High School, and those were some good days when we were there. And I can remember we were there for about a year, and it was a week before we needed to renew our lease there, and there was a new principal, and they basically said no, and we had no idea where we were going to go. And that next Wednesday, Pastor Matt was in the middle of a warehouse over in Hope Mills, and that ended up being the mill. And we were there for a couple of years. And wow, the mill was good days. If those of you that remember the mill, and so many folks did so much while we were there. And just as I look around and see your faces, I think about so much of what so many of you have done. And there's just so many stories. It's hard to pick like which ones you want to tell. There's so many of them. One of the things that happened at the mill is we were just from outside looking in, things looked great. But I would call us, we were kind of a consumer-driven church at that point. It was pretty much about the show of Sunday morning and how we could entertain you. And the more people we could come, and the bigger place we could get, and the more cash we could generate, the better church that we were. And I remember a moment, probably around 2009, where the Lord was like, at times you're a pretty good speaker. At times music's pretty good. And I think people are genuinely kind of entertained. However, there's not a ton of life change. And I was like, well, Lord, can you give me new people? Just like get rid of the 200 I got and give me 200 more. And the Lord was like, well, let's talk about you. And I'm like, well, no, I'd like to talk about them. Let's not talk about me. And I remember the Lord saying, Chad, I don't think you're a disciple. I think you love me. I think you're committed to me, but I don't think you're a disciple in as much as you're actually walking with a group of people, teaching them to follow me the way that you follow me, and that they can actually go and do that as well. And you can keep doing what you're doing, but this is the best that it'll ever be. It won't get any better than this right here. And I said, okay, Lord, I'll give you 1 year. And if it's not better, I'm going back. And that was, 8 years ago. And I remember that move for us where we said, you know what, we're going to be a discipleship church where we're not driven by programs, but really driven by life on life, trying to be God's family recreated in Fayetteville to be about His work. We've had so many different faith moments. I can remember at Jack Britt, we used to do these baptisms out front in this big tub. We still have the tub, like a big horse trough. Literally, we got it from Tractor Supply. Big tub. And this one guy who was, ended up, Jesus got a hold of his life. We had no idea he was going to do it. We asked him his baptism questions, and he said, "Cannonball for Jesus," and literally took off running and did a cannonball into the horse trough. I remember being at the mill, and the earthquake in Haiti happened. You guys remember the earthquake in Haiti? We had like 25 grand in the bank, and it was basically enough just to get us through like 6 months if something would happen. And the Lord, one evening, was like, hey, that money's not a safety net. It's my money, and I want you guys to give it to an orphanage in Haiti. I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. And the Lord's like, well, just Google orphanage in Haiti. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Did it, and there was actually an orphanage run out of Clayton, North Carolina at a sister church of ours that we had no idea about. And the money was the exact amount that would double their capacity to take care of kids for 1 year. So I was still pretty much opposed to it. And I thought, well, I'll ask the lead team. Surely they'll say no. And so we called up the lead team, and they said, well, I think if we actually die as a church because of this, like if this is the last moment, and this is it, we've only been around for 3-4 years, and we only existed for this moment, it'd be worth it. And I thought, I wish you guys didn't love Jesus so much. You know? So we gave all of it away. It's a great moment. Obviously, we're still around, you know, in spite of me. Great moment. I can remember when the rent at the mill we were growing so much that the landlord was like, you guys can pay more, and started raising our rent. And this property opened up, and we moved in here. I can remember being in here not very long, and an opportunity came to start a new church on the north side. And I still kind of regret this, but we said, yeah, that we want to do it. And Kyle, who's the pastor at Crossroads North, was actually a car salesman when we met him. And God got a hold of him, and while we were at the mill, called him to ministry, and he went to seminary. And the year he graduated was the year we were starting the new church. He became the pastor up there. And we told Kyle, you can take whoever you want from South. Shouldn't have done that. But Kyle went with a group of people up to the north side of town, and they finished up worship about 30 minutes ago, which is beautiful, beautiful. There's been so many personal moments of faith here. I can, there's someone in the room who actually gave a kidney to someone else who's not their family, but they were a part of a gospel family with. Like, that happened here. I've watched gospel families buy cars for people who needed it. I've watched people open up their homes to folks who needed a place to live, to get on their feet, to help them out financially. Like, that happens here. We've celebrated with just Emily and Nathan today, just the miracle of Charlotte. Like, there's been some amazing faith moments. There's also been some hard moments the last 10 years. We've walked with 3 wives who said goodbye to their husbands. We traveled with Woody in his battle with cancer. We're still just sitting in the tragedy of Lorenzo's death in a car wreck this year at 30. We've watched, Pastor Matt, who was a part of this from the beginning, be diagnosed with cancer and is still battling that. We've watched folks battle with kidney disease and need transplants. We've said goodbye to so many folks. Like, so many people move from Fayetteville. And, gosh, it's exhausting. And we've at times had people leave that, didn't want to keep walking with us. And that never feels good either. So we've had some tough moments, you know? And we got some next moments. I think I'm not sure what the next moments look like. I mean, sometimes they look kind of bright. Sometimes they look dim. I think either way, I just say whatever's next is worth it. I think that it's worth it. I think whatever's next, it's just good to be reminded that we're not perfect. And so, you know, if you're just kind of passing through today, as we're reflecting on 10 years, if you're looking for a perfect church, this is not it. This is not it. Like, we're far from perfect. There may be those out there. I don't know. I've yet to find one. You could certainly look. But I do think we're trying to be faithful. And as I think about next moments, I think that it's important to realize this, that like we need you. Like, we need me. We need us along the way in these next moments. It's our leg of the race. And God has placed you here at this moment in time. It reminds me of the author of Hebrews in chapter 12. It says, there's a great cloud of witnesses. And I've always, felt like sports are really important in analogies and using them. And so I kind of imagine, like an Olympic stadium and like just the great cloud of witnesses. Everyone's gone before us, like just cheering us on, like literally chanting your name, right? Bruce, 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 Ann, like chanting our names. And so often in the church today, it just seems like, not just in here, but overall, that we as followers of Jesus, we're not running the race. But oftentimes we're walking at best or standing still. And, like, can you imagine, and I'm not trying to make any of us feel guilty, but like, for those of you that have been around, can you imagine, like, Lorenzo and Woody chanting your name to run the race, and you're just standing still? And so I just, want you to know that, like, the Lord's created a great moment for you and I in this next season to run the race that sets before us. And we need one another to do the work that God has for us. And so I think it all comes down to discipleship. And specifically this, that how are you to live, how am I to live as an everyday missionary where you live, work, and play? So we are absolutely, at the very least, fighting against Christian consumerism, which basically says this, that being a Christian means you come to a spiritual Target or a spiritual Bed Bath & Beyond or a spiritual Dick's Sporting Goods once a week, and you get some religious goods and services from them, and if it's really good, you keep paying for it, or if you don't like it, you go to a different store down the road and start going there. Like, we're absolutely fighting against that at the very least. At the very strongest, we're trying to destroy it. And what we're fighting for is, at least it's like if you cut me open, this is what I'm fighting for, is how can we live as disciples? Like, Jesus lived and died on the cross so that you and I could be sent out into the world. You are a sent one. You are an everyday missionary. That's what is true of you and me, of where you live, work, and play. And so how do we get there? So the last 4 weeks, we've been talking about our journey of discipleship. And this journey from guest to friend, to family, to disciple, to missionary. You maybe got one of these on your way in. It just kind of unpacks. I'd love for you to take it home with you and just look at it. It unpacks the journey here at Crossroads, as well as kind of helps you identify where you are in your walk with Jesus. So we've talked about the last several weeks how you may be at a place where you're exploring who Jesus is, that exploring discipleship. And from there, we've got to move to foundational discipleship. That once we say, look, this is who Jesus is, and yes, I believe that, and I want to follow who he is, now it's important to come to know the family. And by the family, I mean the story of Scripture, the foundation of who we are. That's foundational discipleship. And once we understand the foundation, we need to be formed into what it means to be a part of a Jesus family. Be formed in some of the ways that we live that out here at Crossroads. And once we have a foundation and we've been formed, then as we talked about last week, there's this sense of now it's your personal calling in your life, that identity discipleship of who you are and what you're called to. Like you've been created, just take a moment and look at your hands. It's a goofy little thing, but I mean, this is so ridiculous. There's never been another fingerprint like yours. Is that not ridiculous? That's crazy. God cares specifically enough so much about you that He's only created you, which means there's something He has for you to do. And the only way that you figure that out is if you know who you are in Him. What is your core? What's your calling? How do you articulate that? And then what direction are you headed? And once we know who we are, what we're called to, what direction we're going, that discipleship piece, then we're ready to step into what it means to be an everyday missionary where we live, work, and play. Here are just some obstacles that keep us from living as an everyday missionary. I think we've misnamed what a missionary is. So we think a missionary is someone that lives in another part of the world and is helping to bring Jesus there, which actually is absolutely a missionary. They're doing mission work, but it's not just that. It's too limited of a view. I would say for them, that's where God has called them to make a difference, where they live, work, and play. The question is, not all of us live overseas doing that. A lot of us right now, we live here in Fayetteville. But God cares about Fayetteville just like He cares about overseas or somewhere else. And God cares about you and I making a difference where we live, work, and play. How else can Jesus reach people in Fayetteville if there aren't everyday missionaries representing Him where they live, work, and play? Sometimes we think it's just not possible for us, or that it's something that we should even desire. It would be okay for those people, but it's not for me. I just think that your work is significant work, right? What do some of you do? What do? You teach, right? Teacher. No. Missionary who teaches. That's what's true of her. And I think what we're committed to doing here is just saying, let us help you see that what you do is actually missionary work. Whether you stay at home, whether you are in the army, whether you work for Goodyear, whether you're at the post office, whether you have your own little brand deal you're doing, whether you're in med school, whether you own a business, whether you work for a company, whether you work at a church, let us just help you frame out what it looks like for you to live as a missionary where God has called you, where you live, work, and play. There's a great little story of this that we're going to see today. If you have your Bible, Acts 18. I love this story. So this is a story of Priscilla and Aquila. So Priscilla and Aquila, they make tents. And Paul, who is one of the first missionaries of Jesus, who has written most of the New Testament, planted so many churches, he also knows how to make tents. And so when he would travel to cities, he would often have to figure out how he's going to live, how he's going to eat, where he's going to be. And so he meets Priscilla and Aquila because they start making tents together. And Paul begins to offer his life to them in such a way that they become followers of Jesus. And they become followers of Jesus not in a way that they just come to consume something once a week, but they want to see how is it that we live as followers of Jesus in what we do. And they end up discipling Apollos, who is one of the giants of the faith. Giants of the faith. These everyday people and actually correct him in his understanding of what it means to be followers of Jesus and disciple him in that. And then there's a couple of places where they're from Corinth, where Paul writes a letter to Corinth to say, and the church that meets in the home of Priscilla and Aquila reach out to you. All right, here we go, Acts 18. Let me pull mine up here, you guys. It'll take me a minute. All right, 24. Now, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. So Priscilla and Aquila are with Paul in Ephesus. He was an eloquent man, competent in the scriptures, i.e., he was a smart dude, okay? Smart guy, very well spoken, knows his stuff. You've been around them, right? Like, they can kind of talk in and out of anything, etc., all right? He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in the Spirit, he spoke and taught accurately the things concerning Jesus, though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue, but when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, who had been discipled by Paul, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. Like, you speak very well. Actually, let us correct some of your mistheology for you so you'll do better down the road. And when he wished to cross to Achaia, the brothers encouraged him and wrote to the disciples to welcome him when he arrived. He greatly helped those who through grace had believed, for he powerfully refuted the Jews in public, showing by the scriptures that the Christ was Jesus. So Priscilla and Aquila, they have an encounter with Jesus. Just real quick, their life is like this. They see their ordinary life now as a missionary life. Like, that's what an encounter with Jesus does. So some of you here this morning, you believe you have an ordinary life. Okay? You think it's just ordinary. You're going to get up tomorrow morning. You're going to go to your job. You're going to do your work. You're going to come back, maybe have dinner with the family, maybe be with the kiddos, think about what's next. And you're going to do that this week, and then next week, and then next week, and then next week. And then hopefully, if you do it well, at some point in time, you'll get to stop doing that work, and you'll get to do what you want for a little bit. That's called retirement. Hopefully that your children will grow up and they'll do some good things too. And that, there are some extraordinary people in the world, but you're not one of them. You're just kind of ordinary. Some of you believe that about your life. Well, I just want to say that's a lie. As a follower of Jesus, your life is not an ordinary life anymore. It's a missionary life. You're a sent one. I am a sent one in my life. And so Priscilla and Aquila, they did simply this. They just used what they had, where they were, and started to impact others in the world around them for the sake of Jesus. This is all they did. They used what they had, where they were, to start making an impact for Jesus. And so what does it mean to live a sent life? What does it mean to live a missionary life? It means simply this. You just use what you have where you are and start pointing to a specific impact in the world that you want to make. You just use what you have where you are as the starting point for the specific impact that you're called to make within the world. So missional discipleship is simply learning to use what you have and where you are to represent Jesus and his kingdom. All right? So this is like the point on your phone where you make a little note or on your Bible or something so you don't forget this, and you just write, "This is where I am." Like, where are you? Where do you live? Where do you work? Where do you play? That's where you are. And then, what do you have? What do you have? You at least have a smile, right? Like, let me see. You at least have a smile. Some of you have better smiles than other people, but you have one, right? Like you have a hand, and most of you that at least that I look around the room, like you have a voice. Hey, what do you have? I mean, like, I'm being cute, but you have some, what do you have to offer where you live, work, and play in your life? That's what it means to be a missionary, to offer what you have, to start with where you are and what you have to start impacting the kingdom. Now, with missional discipleship, I know this. You need someone to walk with you to help you integrate and maximize your life so that you can live sent. And so what we're talking about here in this move from disciple to missionary in our journey of discipleship, this missional discipleship, this is a piece of the journey when you're ready for that, we want to walk with you and help you maximize those things. We want to help you. Like, literally, I can help you, people. Like, we can help you look in the mirror each and every day and to believe and know you're living sent, impacting where you live for the sake of Jesus. And this is how life will be different. Just 3 quick things here, you guys. When you're living as a missionary, you see your life not as ordinary, but you see your life as a called life. And that ministry, mission work, is not just for paid Christians or people that raise money to go overseas. When you see yourself in this way, you don't feel guilty about what you're doing or see it as insignificant. So some of you, when you think about your life and what you're doing with your life, like some of you may feel guilty for that, or you see what you're doing as insignificant. It doesn't make a difference. But when you see yourself just as Priscilla and Aquila, as an everyday missionary, you see that what God's given you, the work He's given you, is the very thing that He wants to use for you to be planted in this city or area to be light in the midst of darkness. When we live life this way, we're able to look for those. You start looking for people that you need influence from. Who can help me? Who can help me get to where I need to go for Jesus? But you also start looking for folks that you can influence, that you can help along the way. Okay, here's the big question I want to leave you with. Just as you think about the discipleship journey here at Crossroads, we've been talking about this for a number of weeks now, this move from guest to friend, to disciple, to missionary, and family. That piece, you can become family with us here at Crossroads anytime you want, okay? Anytime you want, we'd love for you to be a part of our family. But as you think about where you are, where are you, and what is your next step? Like, what's the next step for you? So our creative team just put a little thing together that says, where are you? Where are you? Well, you're here right now. That's where you are. You can just identify on here, and then how do I take my next steps? It's right there for you, and ways that you'll know and grow. So we want to help you figure that out. And we're committed to helping you take the next step, but you got to figure out what it is. We can't figure that out for you. And you've got to actually say, I want to take it. But for all of you that want whatever the next step is, we're committed to helping you along the way. And I'll just close with this today. We talked a little bit last week about this. I think it's important to just mention again. There's nothing that we're talking about this morning that's easy. Like, this is not easy, this life that we're inviting you into. It's not easy. It's not easy. But, we don't want easy for you. We don't. I think that sometimes we're, addicted to this lie that if life is easy, I'll get to the end of it and think it was great. That's not a good life. To get to the end of it and say, you know what? It was super easy and I was very comfortable. That's not it. It's not it. But what is it is we want you to get to the end of your life and look back and say, gosh, that was worth it. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it. I'd do it. And that's what we want for your life. That's what I want for my life. And we're just committed to trying to do the best we can as a community in helping each other get there along the way.